I've been working at Walmart for over 30 years. In that time, I've done just about everything, from stocking shelves, working the cash register, to even being a manager for about 8 years. However, as I've gotten older, I had to retire from that position because I can't keep up with all the responsibilities. These days, I'm doing something very different, attending the self-checkout area. When I started working at Walmart, self-checkout wasn't even being thought of. I'm there to assist customers who have issues with the machines and scan IDs for certain purchases. But most of the time, I'm just standing there doing nothing. Another thing I dislike about the introduction of self-checkout is the new vulnerability to shoplifting. That's the other major part of my job, making sure people actually scan in everything they are taking with them. That was never an issue before when an employee was doing the scanning, but now I have to be the watchdog over the customers. There are a lot of people that I have to deal with, from rude, incorrigible customers to volatile creeps and weirdos under the influence of everything under the sun. Yet, there are also just the desperate people down on their luck. Things get even worse during the holidays, and nothing compares to the madness of Black Friday. There are so many people in the store that it's incredibly difficult to keep track of everything. And I know more shoplifting than usual gets past me on that day of the year. The lines are incredibly long, so when people finally get up to the self-checkout machines, they often scan stuff in faster than an actual employee. However, this last Black Friday, I encountered the worst kind of person. It was a lone, large woman who had her cart overflowing with items. She made sure to acknowledge me and smile when she approached the machine she was using, but it did the opposite of putting me at ease. Her smile was very suspicious, and the condition of her hair, face, and clothes indicated to me that she was in a desperate situation, so I kept my eye out for her. Of course, I tried my best to not let on that I was watching her, so I pretended to ignore her. Unfortunately, she kept putting up more red flags. She repeatedly looked over her shoulder and made weird faces at me, as if she was checking to make sure I wasn't looking. That, and she was scanning things in at a snail's pace, visibly irritating the other customers in line. It was like she was stalling and waiting for me to lose focus. For the moment, I gave her the benefit of the doubt, so as is my responsibility when customers are having trouble, I went up and offered her assistance.
Excuse me, ma'am. Would you like any help?
Back off! Did you forget this was self-checkout, you wrinkly old shit?
No, ma'am, but you don't have to be rude.
Piss off!
I let her be, rather than continue to enrage her. With her outburst, it was evident she was a Karen. After that, I made it obvious that I was watching her. She must have thought I was blind or stupid or something, because she clearly only scanned 20 or 30 items out of the 100 that were in her cart. She paid and started to leave, but I got in front of her cart and stopped her.
Ma'am, would you please show me your receipt?
Why?
Well, I need to make sure you paid for everything in your cart. Just show me your receipt and then you can be on your way.
You think I'm stealing? Do I look like a criminal to you? I can't believe this! Let me go!
Ma'am, stop! You can't leave!
Get out of my way!
Suddenly, the woman rammed into me with her cart. I stumbled back and grabbed onto it, pushing her back as hard as I could. I heard people laughing at us instead of helping, as the woman bared her teeth and looked at me like she wanted to kill me. For just a moment, my footing slipped and I fell backwards. Then, the woman ran me over with her cart and trampled me. I couldn't get up from the pain, and I was unable to stop her, so I screamed for help. The security officers came just in time and prevented her from leaving the store. Several minutes later, I managed to get back on my feet as the cops arrived and arrested her. The scene of her screaming was still going on at that point, and it didn't stop until she was stuffed into the back of a cop car. She kept wailing and claiming that she had just been evicted and was starving and trying to feed her family, but I honestly didn't believe a word of it. That woman was the most greedy, gluttonous, nasty smear of shit I have ever met. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what happened to her after that, but given that she was attempting to steal over $500 worth of merchandise, I imagine she spent some time in jail. If she really had just gotten evicted, a jail cell is the 4 walls and a roof over her head she deserved from assaulting me. I'm very anxious about confronting anyone at the self-checkout area now, especially on Black Friday. This story was inspired by a creepy Black Friday incident regarding a Fruitland Park woman who was arrested at Walmart after the theft of $355 in merchandise. Bevel Zeline Hinton, 45 years old, went to the store on Black Friday and loaded $425 worth of merchandise in her shopping cart. She proceeded to the self-checkout lane and scanned $75 worth of merchandise. She paid for that merchandise and proceeded to roll the cart to the exit without paying for the other items, which were mostly food and household products. She was stopped by store personnel and taken into custody by a deputy. Hinton told the deputy she had recently been evicted from her home and moved in with a roommate. She said she doesn't have any money. Hinton was arrested on a charge of theft and booked at the Marion County Jail. She was released on her own recognizance.
This happened a few years ago when I went to Walmart for Black Friday shopping. I thought it would be a good idea to bring my wife and kids along so they could pick out what they wanted, but it just made the whole grueling process more complicated. The store was full as hell. There were shit tons of people, wall to wall. If it had been just myself and a shopping cart, I could have made my way through the crowd much easier, but instead I had my wife and 2 kids who kept wandering off to look at different things, forcing me to chase them down every 5 minutes. I couldn't risk them having any interactions with the insane people that were there, fighting over stuff and shouting over who deserved what. Then, because the lines for checkout were so horrendously long, it took us nearly an hour to get to a register, and then another 30 minutes just to get through the parking lot and on the road. We got home at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by then I was exhausted. Of course, that's when I got a call from work saying I needed to come in for the night shift, despite the fact that I had requested the whole weekend off. I apparently had to fill in for somebody who had gotten sick. I was annoyed as hell, but there was nothing I could do to get out of it. On my way there, I passed by the same Walmart from earlier that day, and I had to stop at the red light at the entrance to its parking lot. It was totally empty now, and all the lights were off. However, I saw just one person in the area. It was a lone woman at the corner by the entrance. She was old and wore a very revealing dress that someone her age shouldn't be wearing. I also remember seeing her twitching and sniffing the air in a suspicious crackhead manner, and when I made eye contact with her, she started waving at me, telling me to come over to her. Just then, the light turned green. I contemplated leaving her alone, but I had a nagging feeling I should approach her. I was pretty sure I knew where this was going, but maybe there was an off chance that she just needed some help. Hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, I took a left turn and drove over to her. As soon as I stopped and started rolling down the window, she was leaning in and talking to me.
You want my Black Friday deal, Johnny boy?
Excuse me?
I've got a huge Black Friday sale. My clothes are 100% off in the back seat. That sound good to you?
I'm kinda married.
Oh, you think I'm gonna track down your wife and snitch? Half of my clientele is married. Your missus doesn't need to know about me.
I don't know. It just feels like this is a bad idea. You're not even really my type. No offense.
None taken, doll. I know I ain't as pretty as I used to be, but it's what's on the inside that counts. Why don't you just close your eyes and let me work my magic? I think you'll be surprised by what I'm capable of.
I mean, when you put it like that, it does kind of sound good. How much would it, cost?
$50, all inclusive.
Well, this is my first time doing this. Is that a good deal?
It's a Black Friday sale. I ain't normally so cheap.
Alright, I guess. Hop in. Do you know someplace a little bit more private?
I know just the place.
She eventually had me drive into a dead-end alley. That's when I put my hand over her wrist and made my move. You're an undercover police officer. You're under arrest for soliciting yourself. You have the right to remain silent.
Not not an auntie! Let me go! I'm going to kill you! Help me! He's a pig!
After a few minutes of struggling to restrain the woman, I managed to get her in handcuffs and transferred her to the back of the car. But she kicked and screamed the whole time and even spat on me. Before I left the scene, I called in some backup. The woman never admitted to her so-called Black Friday sale that she was offering me. Either way, she knew she screwed up and was going to jail. Trying to solicit me, an undercover cop? That's the worst possible thing she could have done while streetwalking. However, I sometimes wish I had just driven on by instead of picking her up. I was able to make an arrest that probably saved a bunch of lowlives willing to spend $50 for some Black Friday deals. Impromptu stings like that are very dangerous, much more so than coordinated sting operations. Every night during Black Friday, I think back to that night and wonder how close I came to biting it. This story was inspired by a bizarre Black Friday incident regarding undercover detectives with the Baton Rouge Police Department who used Black Friday to conduct a street-level sting operation and ended the day with at least one arrest. Undercover officers report that while posing as a quote-unquote Johns within the 2200 block of Scenic Highway, they spotted a woman named Tammy Lynn Shepard walking along the highway and called her over. Once Shepard was at their unmarked police vehicle, detectives say she offered her services in exchange for money. As a result, Shepard was arrested and booked into East Baton Rouge Parish Prison.
I remember being strongly opposed to doing any sort of Black Friday shopping when it was mentioned over Thanksgiving dinner. My wife begged me to take her shopping. I tried to get out of it by telling her she should just go by herself, but she didn't want to shop alone and said she would be scared of the large crowds on her own. After a lot of back and forth, I gave in and agreed to go with her. She decided we needed to go early in the morning, right when they opened so that there wouldn't be as many people there as in the afternoon, and nothing would be out of stock by the time we got there. And so when the morning came, we drove and got there 5 minutes after they opened. From what we could see, it was an absolute madhouse. The parking lot was full to the brim. People were lining up on the street just to get in, and then they were waiting to even get into the store. I saw several people almost get hit by cars within a few minutes of trying to find a spot. Everyone was driving and walking around like they were on edge, as if their survival hinged on getting a discounted blender. And then there were the Karens, nasty old women driving around in Chevy Suburbans, parting the seas of shoppers with a field of unbridled rage and screeching out of the windows, racing in to get another 50-inch smart TV for their fourth kid's bedroom. It was chaos, and it was getting to me. At one point, in the seemingly endless search for a parking spot, my wife sighed and said to me that we should have gotten there early, as in well before the store even opened, and I snapped at her. I felt bad and apologized, but it was just the nature of that moment. It turned everyone into animals. Finally, after over 20 minutes, I finally spotted a minivan backing out of a space on the left side. I stopped close to them, leaving just enough room for them to turn, and when they finally got out of the way, I hit the gas and went straight for it. Suddenly, another car came out from behind the van, heading right for a head-on collision. We saw each other at the last second and slammed on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a crash. The corners of both cars were partially in the spot, and just inches from each other. It was dead on, 50-50, but I knew I had seen it first, so I wasn't letting it go. I rolled down my window and went ballistic on him.
Back the hell up! That's my spot! Screw you! I was gonna make it in first until you nosed in! Nosed in? I've been waiting for it for 20 goddamn minutes! So go find somewhere else to park, asshole!
After I told him off the first time, the man ducked his head back into his car. I waited for a few more seconds, expecting him to back up and drive off. But then his hand came back out of the window, and he threw a bag full of trash at my car. I was pissed, and the stuff kept coming. Most of it missed, and none of it was that gross. but it got under my skin like nothing else. In a moment of rage, I grabbed a half-full cup of soda from the day before and chucked it at the window, splattering it all over his windshield. I felt a surge of satisfaction, but then regret. The man got quiet, then stepped out of his car, opened his trunk, then took out a baseball bat. I reacted as fast as I could, throwing the car in reverse and trying to maneuver out of the way, but I couldn't get away fast enough. He smashed the headlights out, causing my wife to start screaming. I looked back for a moment to see where it was clear to go, and when I looked forward again, the man had climbed onto the hood. He looked me dead in the eyes. Then he swung the bat down and smashed the windshield. He kept hitting it until the whole thing fell on us. By then, my wife was in a state of total panic, so I knew I had to get us the hell out of there as soon as possible. I floored it in reverse, causing him to lose his balance and tumble off the roof. I threw the car back into drive as he scrambled to get to his feet. Then I slammed the gas and pointed the car straight for him. At the last second, he dove out of the way. I kept going and swerved to the right, trying not to plow into his car, but I clipped the back end and took out one of his taillights, evening the score just a bit. I drove out of the parking lot and went a couple blocks down the road, where I could finally find a place to park and calm my wife down. We called the cops, but as expected, the man who attacked us wasn't there when they arrived. All they found was the broken glass from the encounter. Nobody was able to get a good look at the license plate either, as it was still covered in snow from the night before. All we know is that the cops were looking for a green Toyota Camry with rear driver's side damage. Unfortunately, the man still hasn't been found, and we don't expect him to be at any point. Now, even though I already hated everything about Black Friday, I have another reason for it to be the worst day of the year. This story was inspired by a horrific Black Friday incident that happened in Tallahassee, Florida. 2 people were injured with a firearm in a dispute over a parking space outside a Walmart. At about 12:30 p.m., police responded to the parking lot after the witnesses reported someone letting off in a rage. Officers found 2 people injured, a man and a woman, who were taken to the hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening. Both are expected to make a full recovery. Police said the victims were going to the store together when the confrontation with a rival driver began. Both were arguing for the same spot in a busy area when the rival started letting off. Authorities declined to provide further details on the incident. No arrests have been made, but officers were looking for a green Toyota Camry that fled the scene.